I see you need a complete 4,000-word story for a YouTube script based on the detailed outline. I'll create this following all your requirements. I stared at my phone as Jessica's name flashed on the screen for the third time this month. My stomach knotted as I answered, already knowing what she was about to say. 4 years together, a beautiful coastal Maine wedding venue booked, and now another delay. I had stood by her through the first 2 cancellations, always understanding, always patient. But something felt different this time. The strain in her voice, the way she avoided my gaze at breakfast that morning. Before I tell you how I discovered what was really happening behind my back, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever felt that gut feeling when something just is not right. I met Jessica at my college friend Erin's housewarming party 4 years ago. She walked in wearing a blue sundress, her dark hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, and I immediately lost track of whatever conversation I was having. When Erin introduced us, she laughed at my terrible joke about the apartment being so clean his mother must have visited that morning. "I love a man who can make me laugh," she said, her green eyes crinkling at the corners. We spent the entire night talking in the corner of Erin's living room, discovering our shared love for hiking mountain trails and classic films from the 70s. By the time the party ended, I had her number and a promise for coffee the next day. Our relationship progressed rapidly. Weekends were filled with hiking trips to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, where we would watch the sunrise from rocky outcrops and talk about our dreams. She wanted to become a marketing director for a major firm. I was building my career as a software engineer, creating systems for financial companies. After 10 months of dating, we moved into an apartment together in Boston. The place was small but perfect for us, with large windows that let in morning light and a tiny balcony where Jessica grew herbs. "This feels right," she whispered the night we unpacked the last box. Like we were always meant to find each other. Meeting each other's families came next. Her parents lived in Connecticut, traditional people with high expectations for their only daughter. They were polite but reserved with me initially. Her father, a stern banking executive, questioned me extensively about my career plans and financial stability. Her mother, a former beauty queen turned real estate agent, seemed more concerned about when we might give her grandchildren. My family in Maine was much more relaxed. My parents welcomed Jessica with open arms, my mother immediately taking her under her wing and teaching her our old family recipes. My younger sister declared Jessica officially cool after discovering their shared obsession with obscure indie bands. Our relationship was truly tested when my father suffered a heart attack during our second year together. Jessica drove through the night with me to reach the hospital in Portland, held my hand through the surgery, and helped my mother keep the household running during his recovery. Seeing her care for my family showed me just how deeply our lives had become intertwined. "You are the one I want to spend my life with," I told her one night as we sat beside my father's hospital bed while he slept. Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. Me too." When my father recovered, I started planning my proposal. I wanted it to be perfect, something that captured our love of nature and adventure. I spent weeks secretly arranging a weekend trip to Acadia National Park, coordinating with a professional photographer to capture the moment, and consulting with 3 different jewelers to find the perfect ring. The morning of the proposal, we hiked up Cadillac Mountain before dawn. As the first rays of sunlight broke over the Atlantic Ocean, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I dropped to one knee and asked Jessica to marry me. "Yes," she cried, tears streaming down her face as I slipped the ring onto her finger. 1,000 times. "Yes." She immediately called her parents, then mine, bubbling with excitement as she described the proposal in vivid detail. We set a date for June the following year, planning a coastal Maine wedding that would combine her elegant tastes with my more rustic family traditions. The first 3 months of our engagement were blissful. Jessica threw herself into wedding planning, creating detailed spreadsheets for vendors and budgets. We spent weekends visiting potential venues until settling on a beautiful oceanfront property near my parents' home. Then, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Jessica started working later, coming home exhausted and distant. Our conversations about the wedding turned into arguments about insignificant details, like the exact shade of blue for the table linens, or whether the cocktail hour should feature a string quartet or jazz trio. "Do you even want to marry me?" I asked one night, after a particularly heated disagreement about the guest list. "Of course I do," she replied, but her eyes did not meet mine. "I am just stressed about making everything perfect." 2 months before our wedding date, Jessica announced she needed to take a business trip to Seattle. Her marketing firm had a potential new client, and her boss specifically requested her presence. "It will only be for 5 days," she promised. "Then I will be all yours until the wedding." The day she left for Seattle, I drove her to the airport, kissing her goodbye at the security checkpoint. Something felt off in her embrace, a stiffness that had never been there before. While she was gone, she called less frequently than usual, blaming her schedule packed with meetings and client dinners. When she returned, she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly and smiling at text messages from people I did not know. 3 weeks before our wedding, while I was in an important client meeting, my phone vibrated with an incoming call from Jessica. Seeing her name, I stepped out, worried something might be wrong with the wedding arrangements. Her voice sounded strained. "I need to talk to you about the wedding." My heart sank. "What about it?" "I think we should postpone." She said the words, tumbling out quickly. "I am feeling rushed and overwhelmed. I need some space to think." The shock silenced me momentarily. Our venue deposits were paid. Invitations had been sent. Family members had booked flights. Space, I finally managed. "What does that mean?" "Just some time," she explained, "to make sure this is what I really want." Though devastated, I responded with understanding. "If you need time, we can postpone. I want you to be certain." We rescheduled for 6 months later, losing several non-refundable deposits in the process. Jessica suggested we try couples therapy to strengthen our relationship before the new date. I readily agreed, wanting to do whatever it took to make her comfortable with our future. Every Thursday night we sat in Dr. Patterson's office, discussing our fears and hopes. Jessica spoke about pressure from her parents to have a perfect wedding and her concerns about losing her independence after marriage. I shared my worries about her recent distance and my fear of not being enough for her. Gradually, Jessica became more affectionate again. She initiated conversations about our future home, potential names for children we might have, and retirement dreams. The therapy seemed to be working, rebuilding the connection we had lost. "I am sorry for the confusion," she told me one night as we lay in bed. "I was just scared. But I know now that you are my future." For our rescheduled wedding, we chose a smaller venue at Boston Harbor, planning a more intimate ceremony with only close friends and family. Jessica threw herself into the new arrangements with renewed enthusiasm, and I felt a tentative hope blooming that we were back on track. The months leading up to our second wedding date brought significant changes. I received a promotion at work, moving up to senior software architect, with a substantial salary increase. With our improved financial situation, we decided to buy our first home, a charming colonial in a Boston suburb with a fenced yard and 3 bedrooms. "For future little ones," Jessica said with a wink as we signed the mortgage papers. Her parents became more involved in the wedding planning, this time her mother accompanying Jessica to dress fittings and floral appointments. Her father offered to contribute to our honeymoon, suggesting an extended trip to Italy that summer. On the surface, everything appeared perfect. Jessica took charge of the wedding details, coordinating with vendors, and creating elaborate Pinterest boards for every aspect of the ceremony and reception. She seemed genuinely excited, calling me during lunch breaks to discuss cake flavors or send photos of potential centerpieces. Yet subtle warning signs began to emerge. Jessica changed the password on her phone, something she had never done before. When I asked about it casually, she claimed it was required by her company's new security policy. "Corporate rules," she said, with a dismissive wave. "They are paranoid about data breaches." Then came the weekend trips. Every few weeks, Jessica would announce plans for a girls' weekend with coworkers or college friends. She would return late Sunday evenings, exhausted and vague about the details of her activities. "Just the usual," she would say, when I asked about her weekend. Shopping drinks catching up. Nothing exciting. Strange texts would arrive at odd hours, causing her phone to buzz during dinner or while we watched movies. She would glance at them, sometimes smiling slightly, then quickly put her phone face down. "Work never sleeps," she would explain if I raised an eyebrow. A new name began appearing in her conversations: Brad, from the marketing department. According to Jessica, Brad had transferred from their Seattle office and was helping her with a major campaign. "He is brilliant with digital strategy," she would say. "The clients love him." I tried to suppress my growing unease, focusing instead on our future together. We had the house. The wedding plans were progressing, and Jessica still spoke enthusiastically about our life together. If she occasionally seemed distant or preoccupied, I attributed it to work stress or wedding anxiety. 2 weeks before our second wedding date, Jessica came home late from what she described as a work dinner. Her makeup was slightly smudged, and she smelled of wine and unfamiliar cologne. "We need to talk," she said, sitting on the edge of our bed, not meeting my eyes. My stomach dropped. "About what?" "The wedding," she whispered. "I think we should postpone again." The familiar words hit me like a physical blow. "Postpone again?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I have cold feet, Cliff. I need to be absolutely certain before we take this step." "Is there someone else?" I asked directly, the question I had been afraid to voice for months. "How can you ask me that?" Jessica's expression shifted from sadness to indignation. "This is exactly why I need more time. You do not trust me. I have always trusted you," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. "But this is the second cancellation, Jess. Something does not feel right. If you loved me, you would understand my need to be certain." She countered, tears now flowing freely. "I do not want to make a mistake we will both regret." Exhausted and confused, I eventually apologized for my suspicions. We agreed to postpone once more, setting a new date for the following spring, nearly a year away. "Third time is the charm," Jessica said with a weak smile. My best friend Michael was less understanding when I told him about the second postponement. We met for beers at our favorite sports bar, the background noise of a baseball game providing cover for our conversation. "Cliff, man, you need to wake up," Michael said bluntly after I explained the situation. "This is not normal behavior. She is just being cautious," I defended her. "Marriage is a big step." Michael set his beer down firmly. "Twice, Cliff. She has canceled twice. And now she wants another year before committing. Do you not see the pattern? What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. "I am suggesting you keep your eyes open," Michael replied. "I am not saying she is definitely cheating, but something is off. You deserve better than being strung along." "I am not going to spy on my fiancée," I said firmly. "Then at least pay attention," Michael urged. "Watch for the signs. Protect yourself emotionally." Though I resisted Michael's implications, his words stayed with me. I did not want to be suspicious, but I could not shake the feeling that Jessica was hiding something. Still, I committed to moving forward with our relationship, and the new wedding plans determined to make it work. "I love her," I told Michael as we parted that night. "I have to trust that this will work out." "I hope you are right," he responded, clapping me on the shoulder. "Just remember, I am here if you need me." As our third wedding date approached, I allowed myself to feel cautiously optimistic. We had secured a beautiful venue on the North Shore, paying a substantial non-refundable deposit to hold the date. Jessica's parents had invited relatives from across the country, some of whom had already purchased plane tickets. "This is really happening," Jessica said excitedly, as we mailed the invitations. "I can feel it this time." I wanted desperately to believe her. The past few months had been good between us. We had continued therapy, though less frequently, and Jessica seemed genuinely invested in our future. She spoke enthusiastically about the honeymoon in Italy. Her father had offered to help finance, and had even begun discussing potential names for our future children. My family was more reserved in their enthusiasm this time. My mother tactfully asked if I was certain about proceeding with wedding plans again. and my sister made pointed comments about Jessica's commitment level. I defended her to them, insisting that the third time would indeed be the charm. 3 weeks before the wedding, Jessica announced she needed to attend a marketing conference in Chicago. The trip was scheduled for 4 days, Tuesday through Friday. "It is mandatory," she explained. "The whole team is going to learn about emerging digital trends." I offered to drive her to the airport, but she declined, saying a coworker who lived nearby would pick her up. "Save yourself the traffic," she insisted. "Besides, my flight is super early." The night before her departure, I noticed something odd as she packed. Among her business attire and casual clothes, she tucked away a small bag containing lingerie I had never seen before, delicate lace pieces in black and red. "New underwear?" I asked casually. Jessica jumped slightly, not having realized I was in the doorway. "Just some things I bought on sale," she said quickly, zipping the suitcase. "My old ones are getting worn out." During her trip, communication was sporadic. She would text briefly in the mornings and evenings, claiming full days of workshops and team dinners that left little time for calls. The few photos she sent showed conference rooms and hotel lobbies, always without other people in the frame. When she returned Friday evening, taking an Uber from the airport despite my offer to pick her up, she seemed distracted and tired, claiming the conference had been exhausting. As I helped unpack her suitcase, I noticed the new lingerie appeared to have been worn. Later that night, while Jessica showered, I noticed a hotel receipt that had fallen from her laptop case. It showed a reservation for 2 guests at a boutique hotel in downtown Chicago, not the conference hotel she had mentioned staying at with her team. My hands shook as I replaced the receipt. I told myself there could be an explanation, that perhaps the company had changed hotels at the last minute, or she had roomed with a female colleague. But the knot in my stomach tightened. Over the next few days, I found myself paying more attention to Jessica's behavior, noting the way she guarded her phone and how she would step outside to take certain calls. I noticed credit card charges for restaurants in Chicago that were nowhere near the conference center she had supposedly been attending all day. The final piece fell into place when a text notification appeared on her phone while it sat on our kitchen counter. Jessica, having stepped outside to water her plants. The message preview from Brad read simply, "Still thinking about our amazing weekend. When can I see you again?" I did not confront her immediately. Something in me needed more confirmation, needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I acted. I spent the next week in a daze, going through the motions of work and wedding preparations while my mind raced with questions and suspicions. Then, exactly 10 days before our wedding date, Jessica called me from her office, instead of coming home after work as planned. "Cliff," her voice sounded strained. "We need to talk about the wedding." Though I had begun to expect it, the words still cut deep. "Let me guess," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "You need to postpone again." Her brief silence confirmed it. "I am so sorry," she finally said. "I am still not ready. I need more time to think." "Time to think," I repeated. "How much time do you need, Jessica?" "I do not know," she admitted. "I just know I cannot go through with it right now." Instead of arguing or expressing the anger bubbling inside me, I simply said, "Take all the time you need." My calm response seemed to catch her off guard. "You are not upset." "I want you to be sure," I said. "Take whatever time you need to figure things out." After we hung up, I sat motionless in our living room for nearly an hour. Then I made a call to Michael, who connected me with a private investigator friend of his who owed him a favor. Just to be sure, I told myself, just to know the truth. The investigator worked quickly and efficiently. Within a week, he had compiled a detailed report complete with photographs, timestamps, and locations. Jessica was indeed seeing Brad, her coworker from Seattle, who had transferred to Boston. According to the investigator, their affair had been going on for over a year, predating even our second canceled wedding. The photos showed them entering an apartment building in Cambridge multiple times. According to the investigator, Brad had leased the apartment 8 months ago, though he maintained an official residence elsewhere. Jessica had her own key and spent several nights a week there, usually claiming to be working late or attending business functions. Most damning of all, the investigator discovered emails between Jessica and Brad, discussing plans to relocate to Seattle together after securing positions at a major tech marketing firm there. They had been planning this move for months, with Jessica stringing me along while they finalized their arrangements. Armed with this knowledge, I invited Jessica to dinner at our favorite restaurant, an upscale Italian place, where we had celebrated numerous anniversaries and special occasions. She seemed surprised by the invitation, but agreed readily, perhaps believing this was my way of accepting her need for more time. She looked beautiful that evening in a red dress I had always loved, her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders. For a moment, looking at her across the table, I remembered the woman I had fallen in love with 4 years ago and felt a pang of grief for what we might have had. "Thank you for understanding," Jessica said after we had ordered. "I know this is hard, but I just need to be certain before we take such a big step." I nodded, taking a sip of water to steady myself. I understand needing certainty. In fact, I have found some certainty of my own recently. Her smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" Reaching into my jacket pocket, I removed a small folder containing select photos from the investigator's report. I slid them across the table without a word. Jessica's face drained of color as she flipped through the images, showing her and Brad entering his apartment, having dinner at an out-of-town restaurant, kissing in his car. "How did you get these?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "Does it matter?" I asked quietly. "Is any of it not true?" Tears filled her eyes. "Cliff, I can explain." "I am sure you can," I replied, "but I do not need to hear it." I reached across the table and gently took her left hand, sliding the engagement ring from her finger. The 2-carat diamond caught the light as I placed it in my pocket. "Brad means nothing to me," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "It was a mistake, a stupid fling." "A year-long fling?" I asked. "With plans to move to Seattle together? That is quite a mistake, Jessica." Her eyes widened. "How do you know about Seattle?" "I know everything," I said simply. "The apartment in Cambridge, the canceled conferences that were actually weekends away together, the fact that you have been planning this for months while stringing me along." Jessica began to cry in earnest, now drawing looks from nearby diners. "I was confused," she sobbed. "I do love you, Cliff. Please give me another chance." I stood up, placing enough cash on the table to cover our barely touched meals. "You have had 3 chances, Jessica. 3 wedding dates. I wish you and Brad all the happiness in Seattle." As I walked away, she called after me, her voice breaking. "Cliff, please. We can fix this." I did not turn around. The next morning, I took a personal day from work and began executing the plan I had formulated during a sleepless night. First, I created a detailed timeline of Jessica's affair with Brad, including dates, locations, and the evidence I had gathered. I compiled this information into separate emails which I sent to our families, our closest friends, and the wedding party members who had repeatedly rearranged their schedules for our multiple canceled ceremonies. I kept the messages factual and unemotional, simply stating that the wedding was permanently canceled due to Jessica's ongoing relationship with another man. I attached selected images from the investigator's report, enough to confirm the truth without being gratuitously hurtful. My phone immediately began ringing, non-stop, first with calls from Jessica, then from her parents, my family, and various friends. I let them all go to voicemail, focusing instead on the next phase of my plan. Jessica came to our house that afternoon, using her key to let herself in. She found me calmly packing a suitcase in the bedroom. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Why did you send those emails?" "My parents are devastated." "I am telling the truth," I replied without looking up from my packing. "Something you might have tried." "You have ruined everything," she said, her voice breaking. "Brad ended things when he saw those photos. He said it was too complicated now. This information, intended to make me feel guilty, or perhaps hopeful, that she was now available, only confirmed my decision. So I was your backup plan," I observed. Nice to know where I stood. It was not like that she insisted. I was confused. "I did love you both. That is not how love works, I said, zipping the suitcase closed. At least not for me. Jessica followed me as I carried the suitcase downstairs. Where are you going? We need to talk about this, about the house, about everything. I have already spoken with a lawyer, I informed her. Since the house is primarily in my name with my down payment, you will be compensated for your contributions. But you need to find another place to live within 30 days. You cannot just throw me out, she protested. Actually, I can, I replied. Check the paperwork. And before you ask, I have canceled all our joint credit cards and removed you from our shared accounts. Your personal accounts are untouched, of course. Her face flushed with anger. You planned all this. I learned from the best, I said, allowing a hint of bitterness to creep into my voice. You planned your escape for months while pretending to love me. I just needed one night. As I loaded my suitcase into my car, Jessica followed me outside, now switching tactics. Cliff, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I made a terrible mistake. I know that now. I do love you. We can start over, go back to therapy, rebuild. For a moment, looking at her tear-stained face, I felt a pang of the love I had carried for 4 years. But it was quickly replaced by the memory of 3 canceled weddings, countless lies, and the calculated betrayal that had been happening right under my nose. Goodbye, Jessica, I said firmly, getting into my car. I wish you well, but we are done. I drove directly to the airport, having already booked a one-way ticket to Auckland, New Zealand. I had always wanted to visit, and now seemed like the perfect time for a fresh start. Michael was the only person who knew my destination, having agreed to handle some matters for me while I was gone. Before boarding my flight, I sent one final email to my family, assuring them I was safe and would be in touch when I was ready. I also notified my employer that I would be taking an extended leave of absence, using the considerable vacation time I had accumulated over years of dedicated work. Then I turned off my phone, boarded the plane, and left my old life behind. New Zealand was everything I had hoped for and more. The stunning landscapes, friendly people, and distance from my previous life provided the perfect environment for healing. I found temporary work at a small vineyard outside Auckland, living in a cottage on the property, and learning about wine production from the elderly couple who owned the estate. You Americans always running from something, joked Carl, the vineyard owner, after I had been there a few weeks. But whatever it is, the vines do not care. They just need tending. That simple wisdom became my mantra. I tended the vines, learned the business, and gradually tended to my wounded heart as well. I rediscovered my passion for photography, capturing the breathtaking scenery of my new home and selling prints to tourists at local markets. Each month I would hike alone into the mountains, spending a day in solitude to reflect on my journey and my growth. On these hikes I gradually came to understand that Jessica's betrayal, while painful, reflected her character flaws, not my inadequacies. The right person would not need 3 chances to choose you, I told myself on one such hike, watching the sun set over distant peaks. 6 months into my New Zealand adventure, Michael emailed to inform me that Jessica and Brad had indeed broken up. According to mutual friends, Brad had ended things, claiming the relationship was tainted by how it began. Jessica had apparently tried to contact me numerous times, her messages growing increasingly desperate. 2 weeks later, Michael sent another unexpected update. Jessica had somehow discovered my whereabouts and had boarded a flight to Auckland. Just a heads up, Michael wrote. Not sure what she is planning, but thought you should know. Sure enough, Jessica appeared at the vineyard the following day, looking tired from travel, but still beautiful, in a way that once would have weakened my resolve. How did you find me? I asked, meeting her in the gravel driveway, keeping my distance. Michael would not tell me, she admitted, but I remembered how you always talked about visiting New Zealand someday. I called every vineyard within 50 miles of Auckland until I found one that recognized your name. Impressive detective work, I acknowledged. Why are you here? Jessica stepped toward me, her eyes filling with tears. To apologize properly. To try to make things right. We talked for hours that afternoon, sitting at a picnic table, overlooking the vineyard. Jessica explained her confusion, Her fear of commitment, how Brad had represented an escape from decisions she was not ready to make. I loved you both in different ways, she confessed. But I know now that what I felt for him was infatuation, not love. What we had was real, Cliff. I just was too scared to recognize it. I listened, patiently acknowledging her feelings without dismissing them. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly, hope evident in her eyes. I forgive you, I said finally. But that does not mean we can go back. Why not? She asked, reaching for my hand. We both made mistakes. We could start fresh, maybe even here in New Zealand. Gently, I withdrew my hand from hers. Because some things, once broken, cannot be repaired. Not in the same way. The trust is gone, Jessica. And without trust, love cannot survive. I can earn your trust again, she insisted. I will do whatever it takes. I shook my head. The fact that you think trust can be earned back after such a profound betrayal shows that you still do not understand what you destroyed. Tears streamed down her face. So that is it. 4 years together means nothing. It meant everything to me. I corrected her. That is why your betrayal cut so deep. But now I have found peace without you, and I am not willing to risk that peace for someone who needed 3 canceled weddings to realize what she wanted. Jessica stayed in Auckland for 3 more days, making increasingly desperate attempts to change my mind. When she finally accepted that my decision was final, she left a letter at my cottage and returned home. The letter contained all the things she had already said, and more promises of change, declarations of love plans for a future together. I read it once, acknowledged the sincerity it contained. Then let it go, just as I had finally let her go. A year after leaving Boston, I decided it was time to return to the United States. New Zealand had healed me, but I missed my family and friends. The vineyard owners had taught me enough about the wine business that I felt confident starting a small photography business focused on vineyard landscapes. I returned, not as the heartbroken man who had fled, but as someone stronger, more self-assured, and clearer about what I wanted from life and relationships. I settled in Oregon's wine country, close enough to visit family but far from the memories of my life with Jessica. Through this painful journey, I learned that red flags are warnings, not challenges to overcome. I learned that loving someone does not mean accepting betrayal or disrespect. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes losing what we think we want leads us directly to what we actually need. Today, I am grateful for the pain that ultimately guided me to authentic happiness. I have found fulfillment in independence and self-respect, values I will carry into any future relationship. The engagement ring that once symbolized a false promise now sits in a safe deposit box, a reminder not of what I lost, but of what I gained the courage to walk away and the wisdom to know when a door needs to stay closed. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to walk away from someone you loved? What signs did you notice that helped you make that choice? Share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength through difficult times. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.